Ronnie Sanders, the man, Auburn Undercover. Rob Browne, Doug Dean's going to join us from Birmingham in a minute, and our executive producer, Brendan Martin. What a year. You and I were talking earlier today. Do you think the average person out there appreciates for 7-8 straight weeks Auburn has been ranked number one in the nation in basketball? Has the full gravity of that gotten hold of people, Ronnie? Because I would be proud of us.
You know, I think not. I mean, I think Auburn people are obviously happy and shocked and excited, and I think everybody thought that Auburn would be good this year, but I'm not sure anybody thought that Auburn would be this good. Nationally, I think that you're seeing a lot of national guys falling over Duke, which is about what you'd expect. But I think that Auburn basketball certainly doesn't get the respect that some of the other quote unquote blue blood programs do in basketball.
Ronnie, a lot of people will say now with the environment with the portal and NIL that the blue blood program, that era has come and gone. I mean, look at the crash and burn with Kansas this year. Look at North Carolina. Kentucky's not their best. They're good. Indiana, you made a great comparison. Auburn and Indiana, football, basketball. Talk about that.
And I know some people in Indiana. I know a former head coach there really well. I know some people in the athletic department, and have some friends that actually live up there and went to Indiana. So I know a little bit about the program. But the way that Auburn people are a little bit different in that you want to win and you want to do it a certain way with a certain personality and those kinds of things. And Indiana basketball is a little bit the same way. As we were, a friend of mine was down here. They were visiting. He was visiting. He and his wife were visiting with their kids, all four of them. And he was talking about Indiana, and I was talking about Auburn. We kind of looked at each other and we're like, "It sounds a lot alike." And you kind of start digging in, and it is. So it's an interesting comparison.
Yeah, Ronnie, this basketball season, here it is. Auburn is 13-1. Watching the last couple of games again, you don't ever push aside a victory. That win over Arkansas, look what they did to Missouri. Went over Georgia, look what they did to Florida. You got Ole Miss coming in. Talk about Chris Beard, what you think he and his staff will do to try to slow Auburn and snatch a victory. And you got 4 games left. Auburn's got to win, magic number 2 to win an SEC championship, which is kind of a big deal still.
Yeah, there's no question. And especially if you look at the runs that Bruce Pearl has been here the last 4 or 5 years, whatever it's been, 6 years. In particular, it took him a little bit to get going, but since then it has been it's been a heck of a run for Auburn. I think for Auburn, it's keep your eye on the ball. You win these next 2 games, and you've clinched at least a share of the conference title. If you get through Saturday and you win both these games and Alabama loses, then you're kind of there. So I think that Auburn feels good. At the same time, you got to line up and you got to play and you got to be ready to go. And Neville Arena should be rocking tonight, I would think.
Yeah, Philip Marshall wrote, as he often does, just another brilliant piece, how Auburn and Alabama wrested control of basketball in the SEC. Only Philip can write like that. I mean, it's in his genes, The guy is he has a way of going into the middle of chaos and pulling common sense out of it. But it is the last 7 years, and here it is, 8th year now. The 2 schools, Auburn and Alabama, we're focusing on Auburn, obviously. It's amazing. It's nothing short of amazing.
It really is. You look at the football tradition in both those schools, you can see that. But from a basketball standpoint, especially at Auburn, Auburn's had some high points. Alabama's had some high points, probably longer high points than Auburn has. But if you look at at the job that Bruce Pearl has done, it's nothing short of amazing. I mean, it's really just there's not really much way to describe it other than just to say it's Bruce Pearl was to Auburn basketball, and I don't want to compare anybody to Nick Saban because I don't think there is any comparison. But Bruce Pearl to Auburn basketball is the equivalent of when pretty close to when Alabama hired Nick Saban. And, Auburn was kind of, it was not a good situation. You just fired Tony Barbie, and the program was in a mess. And you tried this and you tried that. Finally built a new arena, and finally said, "Hey, look, let's go find a guy who fits." And Bruce Pearl fit, and let's go find a great coach. Bruce Pearl's a great coach. And Alabama fit at Nick Saban, and Nick Saban fit at Alabama, and Bruce Pearl fits at Auburn. And he's and Bruce Pearl said, "Look, I've coached a lot of places. This is the best place I've ever been as far as developing kids." And so you get kids on campus at Auburn, you got a shot. And you look at some of the age on this Auburn team; it's an older team compared to some of the others around the country, and that's where NIL has leveled the playing field for a lot of different people. I mean, because before these, if you're not paying a kid, then he's going to go to the G League or, he's going to do whatever. Now, you can pay these kids as much from an NIL standpoint as they can make in G League in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
So, and they get a college experience.
Yeah, I agree. Let's bring in Doug Dean down in Birmingham, AU Dose. Doug B. Dean, coming here with us. Welcome aboard. Didn't want to. I knew we were a little bit late today, working on some streaming issues. We're doing 9 channels simultaneously at the same time. Thank God we got Brendan Martin in there. But Doug, you put out Maury Gaston, our friend from Sylacauga, the Marble City, at a meeting Monday. I wish I would have been there in Birmingham.
We got to get you to that meeting.
Yeah, I will. I'll come. I will be
and
there.
Ronnie too. I told Ronnie Ronnie could be a speaker there at some lunch.
Phenomenal. Well, let's talk about
the elder statesman. I'm not going to call them geezers because I'll be there before I blinked an eye. But it's the elder statesman of the Auburn family. A bunch of, and some former Shug Jordan, Letterman. So they're Ronnie, I bet you get to speak to a lot of audiences. And some audiences are just really appreciative that you're there. And that's how I would describe these guys. They love each other. They've got opinions, but it's a fun group. I'd love to get both of you there. And we could even do dinner that night somewhere in Birmingham.
Hey, Birmingham, most underrated food city in the South, by the way.
I tell people we understand we're not the scale of Atlanta and Chicago and even Nashville of some numbers of great restaurants, but when I just go by not my own biased opinion as a resident here, but when I bring people here from all across the country, sometimes from across the pond, and you take them to the right one of these 6 or 8 of my favorite places, whether it's casual or really upscale dining, and I don't have to sell it, man. They say, "Are you kidding me?" And of course, they're award winning. So I appreciate you saying that. We're getting better. It's always been a friendly town. You can actually get around, except for Highway 280. You can get around in Birmingham short of a hour and a half drive like some cities. So I love the pace of life here.
It is. And my son goes down there for meetings for the day and comes right back. And it's so close with I-22 now. It is. But, man, I love this discussion. And right before you came on, I want to get into
Bruce Pearl, right? I want to comment on that too.
And then talk about the Duke deal. You put out some data on some numbers that, Ronnie, they'll open a lot of people's eyes, maybe even Dick Vitale's eyes that are Mr. Duke.
Here's the thing. This should always be a preface, or Brendan, our producer, can scroll across the bottom of if you have only one source and don't credit them, that's plagiarism. If you have many sources, it's research. Right? Yeah. And so I would always want to give credit to the fine writers and content producers at 24/7. I could name all the other great sites. And also Justin Ferguson, that I'm a faithful reader of his. He is high on the nerd scale at Auburn Observer. But the thing, none of this is original. I don't want to take credit, but if people are willing to read and research, you can start to, congeal some of your own opinions. And I was trying to make the case not for Auburn as the overall number one seed, barring Auburn losing like 3 or 4 in a row. And you're not going to find anybody that will take that bet unless you're talking point spreads. Auburn is going to be the overall number one seed, even if they only win one, probably if they win no games in Nashville at the tournament, because they don't play until Friday, no matter what.
Yeah.
But look, I was trying to make the case, and it's kind of weird that we have to make the case of Janai Browne as National Player of the Year. And like I said in today's newsletter, with apologies to Julius Caesar, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I do not come to bury Cooper Flagg. He's a hell of a player, and he's going to have generational wealth. I presume he'll go NBA. Wouldn't you guys expect that? I might even want to enjoy college life another year, but you start worrying about injury and all that. Yeah. So he's an unbelievable player, very worthy of the honor. But at some point, when their numbers are close, if a voter's going to be fair, and they won't all be fair, some of them will just see that Blue Devil logo and they just can't help themselves. They're going to say anything. If I get any opportunity to help the Blue Devils, I'm going to do it. You get that. You might get that with a few voters in favor of the Southeastern Conference and Browne. You probably get a mixture of Bruce haters out there. I think their numbers are dwindling, but there's some anti-Bruce element out there. But the point I was making is Auburn, if you go to Ken Palm's strength of schedule column, it's on the far right, Ken Palm metrics. Y'all have seen this. Auburn is ranked second on net rating. And you need to yodel with me in the valley down there. Duke is 52nd in strength of schedule. Now, that's not Duke's fault that the ACC is, a glorified church league on the bottom end of their conference this year. Yeah. Nothing against church leagues. They could probably whip my tail. I've never seen Shaquille O'Neal on a church league team.
No.
And so at some point, if the metrics are close, and Janai Browne is ahead on a lot of them, maybe a little more than half of them, and they're neck and neck on a lot. It's a two-man race, as everyone has said. But you got to adjust for fair or unfair to Duke and Cooper Flagg. You got to adjust for which player has done this against clearly superior competition. And so that's why I think Janai should win it in by a nose, not by 20 links like Secretariat. But I'm not going to be surprised whichever of those two win it. It's so hard to predict the regional bias and other biases when it comes to voting.
I mean, you can't. What he just said, Ronnie. You think about.
Oh, one other quick thing, Rob. And I love this line, and it's fun to use when you get the opportunity. But one reason Auburn's strength of schedule, the reason Auburn's strength of schedule is not number one in Ken Palm, is that Auburn does not get to play Auburn. That Alabama does, and Alabama's number one strength of schedule, and they're helped by that game, even though they lost a close one. They're helped by having played Auburn.
Yeah. And Ronnie, what he's saying, I agree. Auburn can't play Auburn. But the other part of it is, and we all love Dick Vitale. I mean, he's done so much to promote basketball. But it's like, bring him out of storage. I know he's been fighting his own battles. God bless him. But they are pushing the man crush with Duke by the national media, Ronnie. How does Auburn overcome that? Oh, I got an idea. Just keep winning and stacking the W's up. That'll take care of it. All you got to do.
It's not often that how many years, even 2019, if memory serves, Auburn was needing help to get, well, probably not just to get in the tournament. They went on that, was it an 11-game win streak heading into the SEC tournament or something like that? After that debacle in Rupp Arena, they just caught fire, but they needed some help. And it's so relaxing this year that we don't have to ask for help from other teams. Whatever Auburn wants, the entire 9 yards of it, they can control. their own destiny. Not that it's easy winning these next 4, much less winning deep into March Madness.
Yeah. Ronnie, looking at the national narrative, again, Auburn number 2 in the Ken Palm thing, there's always going to be some guy in his parents' basement that's got a matrix that's going to put you where you don't want to be. Let's talk about the one tonight with Ole Miss coming in. Auburn, I like the 247 on Auburn versus Ole Miss on the website. You break it down. So let's talk about Chris Beard. His team will play their tails off, but what's their tallest starter, about 6'7". They don't shoot the ball as well, but watch them go out tonight and shoot lights out. But let's talk about that matchup tonight at the Neville Arena.
Well, I think one thing for Ole Miss is, and I don't think it's as big in basketball as it is in football, but I mean, that Indiana job is hanging out there. And there's a lot of chatter about Chris Beard. And so again, I don't know anything. I'm not saying he's taking it or not taking it or whatever, but at some point, especially the younger guys on your team, it starts to affect them if they think they're going to be around. And so, again, I'm not saying he's taking the job, but, or that he's going to be offered it. Even though that sounds likely on both counts. But, you wonder if that's affecting them. Will Neville Arena affect them? My guess is yes. But we'll see. I mean, I feel pretty good about Auburn's chances tonight. I think that, again, we'll see. Doug, what are your thoughts?
I'll tell you, I'm not evading Ronnie's on-point question. I'm just going to pivot a little on it to make a point. There's a psychology out there. I don't know the name for it because that's not my background. In which, and it's closely related to these adrenaline junkies. These thrill seekers, extreme sports guys. And I've been the last week or so. I've been a little worried that our guys subconsciously are getting enamored with, hey, we're a little bored. All we do is win, and except for that Florida game. And we like to let it be close for a while to keep some excitement in it. And we always knew all along the last 8 minutes we can close out this game. I think that's playing with fire. And it's not going on that consciously. I think our guys would rather have 3-point shots falling like rain through the nets. And our shooters are struggling a little bit when you've got Janai Broome and some of these guys in CBM that you can win a bunch of different ways. But I don't know that we'll get it, but I'd really love for the health of this team and to send a message to Big Blue Nation with Auburn headed to Rupp Arena, where we haven't won since 1988. Was that John Kaler back then?
With the mullet from above, from Morristown, Tennessee. That was a Tennessee waterfall.
So, yeah, Auburn. And now Bruce, I think I said on the last show, Bruce has held his own and then some with Kentucky the last, 8 or 10 games. But I would love Auburn to really hit on all cylinders tonight and not have our shooting percentage be down. I'd love to at least get to 10 or 11 threes, get our shooting stroke back. I'm not worried about foul shooting. We're going to have some really big games that are unavoidably tight. Yeah. And if we get even a 3 or 4 point lead and they've got to foul us, you can bet Bruce is going to have Denver Jones, CBM, Miles Kelly. I'm leaving somebody.
Pettiford.
Yeah, Pettiford for sure. Those guys handling the ball, and when you've got to foul them, and we're not going to have Dylan Cardwell in the game because that's the first thing I would do is foul him and put him at the line. No offense, Dylan, but tonight if they could, doesn't have to be a perfect game. But if it could be frankly, like we played in Oxford, same team, same opponent. Yeah. If you can get some of that mojo back, I think that would really give Auburn just a little bit of an intimidation factor that can help us in these next coming up games. And we only need to win, I think, 2 of them to share. Yeah. But we are not in a sharing mood, Crimson Tide. I think Florida's out of it after last night. Y'all agree with that?
Well, they're 11
except mathematically. It's going to be impossible, I think, for Florida. First of all, Auburn's not going to lose 4 in a row. Alabama could win every game they have left, but it won't be easy. So it's just like the 1 versus 2 Alabama Auburn. Now this regular season race looks like it's down to Auburn or Alabama, and the smart money is on Auburn.
Yeah.
Well, I think the other thing, not to interrupt Rob there, but the close games I think make you better. And I think Rob and I were talking about that earlier today. I'm not worried if Auburn goes out and wins a close game versus winning by 20 or 30. I think that makes you better for the tournament because there's going to be nights you're going to have those games, and you've got to be able to overcome those things, especially if you want to win a championship. And in all likelihood, you're going to have one of those games in a tournament. And so, how do you overcome it?
Can it not be against Yale, for God's sake? I'll have PTSD.
Right.
It's going to be interesting what the committee thinks about. I think if they were seeding the tournament today, this is just a guess, but I think they would want to set it up where there's the possibility of an Auburn-Duke final. Do y'all agree with that? Those are the two most talked about teams. They would have the marketing of it. They would have the 1 and 2 National Player of the Year contenders. But it'll be interesting to see if SEC gets 3 1 seeds, how do they set it up for the rest of the SEC? What brackets do they go in? Because frankly, I would not be excited to have to play a Florida Gator team again that may drop to a 2 or 3 seed. Well, I don't think a 3, but they'll probably drop to a 2 seed. It looks like
the worst. Yeah, I think so.
And this is your reward for having 12 or 13 teams make the tournament. You're going to get to play a bunch of them.
Well, the other thing is, what if we haven't talked about what if Alabama's in the opposite bracket and you end up with an Auburn-Alabama national championship game?
Would they allow for that? I think I could see a semi. I'm sort of paranoid, Ronnie. My dad said just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. But I can't believe that they would agree to an all SEC final the way they set up the brackets. Maybe I'm wrong.
You're probably right, and I'm not sure that the state could survive it anyway.
Yeah. It would be crazy.
This is like Gaza and Israel, and each fan can decide which is which.
Yeah, and then you got this college football playoff expansion and all that coming. I mean, at some point, you're going to have Auburn and Alabama meet in this playoff, and it is going to be wild.
Yeah,
I know that's not
talk. Go ahead, Ronnie. I walked on you. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
So
you're good.
There is talk of, when you're sitting here 1-0 against Alabama and you go into their house, that's a tough place to win when Alabama's playing this well, and Auburn is able to get that one. And we'll see. It wouldn't shock me entirely for Alabama to come into Neville and win because they're good enough to do it. And I would take Auburn right now. It'd be interesting I think the line might be like Auburn plus 1 or 2. We'll see in these next couple of games, but Auburn and Alabama could play 4 times before this season is over.
Yeah. Hey, that's kind of what I thought was going to happen in 2017. Auburn lost up at Clemson early when Jarrett Stidham was sacked 11 times and then beat number 1 Georgia, ULM, and number 1 Alabama. And if Kerryon Johnson hadn't have been hurt, maybe if Mr. Petway would have taken care of his personal life a little better, he would have been able to play. Could have given him some rest, but I digress. But you never remember 13-7 early fourth quarter, Auburn driving the ball, and they hit Kerryon. He fumbles. A play later, Mr. Swift out of St. Joseph's Catholic Prep School up in Philadelphia goes 75 yards. Auburn has been so close, guys, in so many sports. Won it all in 2010. And that's a whole podcast. I mean, y'all know what I'm going to go to. Yeah. Claiming these national championships and
recognizing.
Yeah, recognize them because they're there. And I tell you what, Doug.
It's been documented. There's a guy, Mike Scott-Nicky, I'm friends with.
Yes,
wrote a book
that's right.
on that. Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, watch the podcast that Ronnie Sanders and Nathan King produced with Terry Bowden.
It's very well done.
That was really moving. He is forever married to Auburn. But yeah, And you go back to that 2019, the Virginia game. So, guys, here we are again. We're knocking on the door. How many schools, the so-called blue bloods, can produce a resume like Auburn has in the last 7 years in basketball?
None of them at this point. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I mean, and both of y'all are putting out, in your writing, Doug and Ronnie. I want to ask you, Cooper Flagg's numbers. You put out some numbers where Auburn and Browne were in the low single digits. Flagg and Duke were in the 40s and the 50s and above, Doug. Expand on that.
Schedule. Well, I'm not I've got a little geek in my background.
We all do.
Early in my career, just full disclosure, was the reason I wear contact lenses and glasses in the evening when I get tired of the contacts is I was in the 80s. I was working for a big health insurer in Alabama. You can figure out which one. And I was remember Lotus 1-2-3 spreadsheets?
God,
It was that long ago before Excel really took over. But so I've got enough nerd in me to enjoy the quant side of this. Again, like I said, Justin Ferguson has few equals in finding these advanced stats. And right now, when you hear a Jay Billis and I really like Billis' work, sometimes his Duke bias creeps in, but I can forgive that. My goodness, he played there, coached. He as an assistant, look forward to meeting Billis. The guy's 6'8". It's wear some cowboy boots to get a couple of more inches height when you meet him, so you don't suffer by comparison. But when he was an assistant for Coach K, I think 82, 84 maybe, he was also going through law school at Duke School of Law while he was can you imagine? I mean, even if it wasn't the season, you're out recruiting. I don't know how you do law school, Duke Law, and coach. But when you hear national pundits, credible guys that can't, even if they don't like the SEC or they think Bruce Pearl is the Antichrist, they can't run from the numbers, or they indict themselves with foolishness. And the numbers have just become so doggone compelling on two fronts, not just what Auburn's doing, it's what the entire SEC is doing.
Yeah.
And, the worst team, I'm glad Duffett and on the Frank Duffy, Ronnie is a good friend of ours, and he's a big LSU guy, but he's just electric to have on air. Funny as hell, like most LSU fans.
Yeah.
But I'm glad Duffett and hearing this. LSU has the lowest net score in the SEC. But LSU is still, I think, ahead of 5 or 6 ACC teams, if that makes the point, Mm-hmm. So but this Auburn team is being talked about as the flagship, if that doesn't change the next 4 games, the flagship of the greatest conference based on all the metrics that we've seen in 30 or 40 years, maybe longer.
Maybe longer.
Pretty special.
Yeah. Ronnie, question for you on recruiting. Todd Pettiford, we know, is a 5-star. You've had, few other 5-stars, probably 6 under Pearl, McDonald's All-Americans and all. Living in Memphis, I mean, I've been watching what Penny Hardaway does, bringing in all these players. That's great. But if they don't buy all in to the team culture, like what Bruce Pearl's doing, and saying, hey, Doug, if you come here out of John Carroll High School in Birmingham, I know you've been playing every minute of every game since you were a little kid. You might play 20, 25. We move it around. We spin it around a lot. I don't think Bruce Pearl gets nearly enough credit for the job that he and that staff do. And when they go to the side over to the bench, during a timeout, when you see everybody stand up, there's more analysts and support people standing up than there are players. And to be able to get all those guys dialed in, the one oar principle. Okay, I'll help you. You put one oar in the water, I'll put another one, and we'll row the same direction. That is an amazing feat, Ronnie Sanders. And it doesn't get enough credit to that staff.
Well, I think Bruce doesn't get enough credit. I think obviously the assistants as well, but I also think Auburn doesn't get enough credit. And I think that Auburn is a different kind of place, in that if you get kids on campus, that's what we always said when I was there. If we can get him on campus, no matter where he's from, you got a shot, because kids get there and they feel good about it. And even when Auburn's bad, the spirit is still there, or seems to be.
Yeah.
Kids have a great time at the games and around campus and around town, and hanging out with the players. And if you've got a great culture, it shows up. I think the thing about Bruce too is, and this was really more true at the beginning than it is now, but Pearl and his staff, they like guys with a little bit of an edge. And so if a kid has been in a little bit of trouble before, they don't mind handling those kids, and they handle them really well. And a lot of times you've just got to, you've got to let them do what they do and corral them. And, but he has done a really, really good job of keeping those kinds of guys in line and getting the very best out of them. And look, I keep going back to Nick Saban. I know we're on an Auburn podcast, but he always talked about, hey, look, is it better? People want me to suspend this kid or get rid of this kid or whatever. He's like, is it better for me to suspend this kid, make everybody happy, and he goes back and he's on the streets, or is it better for me to keep him around and punish him and hold him accountable, and then he ends up being a great father and a great husband, and on and on. And he talked about, I think it was Musa Muhammad, who played for him at Michigan State, and had all kinds of issues at Michigan State. Saban straightens him out, ends up winning, I think it was the NFL Man of the Year award. He's got 4, 5, 6 kids, something like that. Runs a hedge fund. I mean, all sorts of things. And so, there's a line, obviously, that you can't cross. I mean, you can't do a Robert Baker and sell cocaine on campus.
Yeah.
But
I don't recommend it.
Yeah, I'm not for kicking kids off for minor violations. I think that I did a lot of things in my 20s that I probably wouldn't do now, and even in my 30s that I wouldn't do now. So.
There you go.
When I was I joined the show in progress, y'all were. I'm pretty sure I heard y'all invoking in the same sentence the GOAT, the great Nick Saban. And by the way, it's okay to be an Auburn or other fan, Georgia fan, whomever, and acknowledge that Saban knew what the hell he was doing.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there's not a coach in the history of college football or basketball or any sport that doesn't have some flaws, because we're human beings. But I thought I heard y'all invoking Bruce Pearl in the same sentence as Nick Saban.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. And Ronnie and I had not texted or talked. We had a nice happy hour a couple of days ago, but we had not talked, and that was exactly the parallel, which is probably, I can be correctly accused of reaching or being biased as an Auburn guy, but I'm interested in the truth and opinion that's defensible based on some kind of evidence. But I think there's not going to be I've said this in football. I think it's true in basketball. Yeah. There's just not likely to be a dynasty the way we think of Alabama's run under Saban, because of what we've built between the Big Ten and the SEC. And that's going to play out in basketball, and it's going to follow closely with who's willing to write the checks with NIL. Really proud of Auburn's leadership and a few billionaires that love Auburn, that we're holding our own. We're in the game, But I really look at Bruce Pearl in the twilight, I guess the twilight of his career. Bruce is going to, I'm sure, be allowed to decide how many more years he wants to coach. But if Bruce can, I want to draw a parallel between Saban, and there were probably 2 or 3 years that Saban really impressed all of us. And if you're an Auburn fan or Georgia fan, to your dismay, you saw him adapting. First, when Sammy Coates caught that RPO in the kick 6 game that tied it up, and Auburn had not thrown the ball a single time. It was all Trey Mason, which was beautiful. You can hate on Gus, but man, when that wing T run is working and they can't do anything about it, and it sets that up. Saban said it's illegal, or they it's for player safety. And then a year later, Saban was implementing the same thing. He adapted and conquered. And I see Bruce Pearl having adapted and conquered. Bruce said, "How does this work? Our strength of schedule wasn't good enough. What happens? Even if you win or lose, you get dinged and you don't get a 1 or 2 seed with some of your best teams." And so Bruce built that. Now, what are we being criticized for, guys, which I wrote about today? Auburn's team is too old.
That's
like
right.
It's a freaking NCAA violation by the evil, conniving Bruce Pearl to go out and get it turns out it's not, as Stephen Pearl said on an interview, it's not even the number 1 oldest team. It's the 5th most mature, oldest team in the SEC, and 25th or 26th oldest in all of college basketball Division I. So when excuses like that are being made up by people that don't love your program, you must be doing something right.
Yeah. And talking about old, my son went on his marketing club trip when he was in high school to New York City. They went to the garment district, went to Brooks Brothers, got to meet all the people there. They're pretty good at making clothes, been doing it a long time. Their motto is, we're not good because we're old because we're good. And there's a lot of, you look at Janai Broome. I mean, my wife Audrey the other night, she goes, "God, how old is that guy?" I mean, I'm like, I think he's 23 or 24. But look, Miami's got a guy that's been in college for 9 years. Tommy Boy was there for 7. So you look the cold. I'm biased. I mean, and I get to do sidelines covering the whole league, and Doug's on that round table with us. He's a big part of our show, whatever success we have. Brendan's our producer. We get to talk all these schools. They love their schools. But when you get to Auburn, I get calls every year. Can you help so-and-so trying to get into Auburn? I mean, from around the country. And these are people who, you know what most of them's story is? We were on the way back from vacation at Disney World or Florida, and we just stopped by and took a tour, and they're from St. Louis or they're from Charlotte, and they're like, "But this is it. I've found my school soulmate," whatever that corny ass term is, but they can't get enough of it. And as far as what you said, I've got 3 kids now, 4 with Mallory. I remarried. Some of the stupid stuff they've done. And Doug, you've raised 3 girls. If we threw them overboard, I wouldn't have any.
The saying, I don't want to drag y'all down with my ass, but I bet all 3 of us have a war story or 3 to tell about the saying, my favorite saying, "Youth, Rob, is wasted on the young."
That's right.
If I had my 21-year-old energy level and not that I'm smart, but the brain of all this experience and hard knocks now, man, you could conquer the world.
You really, I mean, and as you'll notice, Ronnie, the number of references Doug will use to Julius Caesar. What was it? Dearth of the D'Urbervilles.
Rob?
But what was the book the other day that you referenced? The Dearth of the
Tess of the D'Urbervilles, a great 20th century novel. And the line is, it's a long story. People can read the cliff notes that y'all probably had. When you had to take an English class at Auburn, y'all said, "Where do you get the cliff notes?" You should have just called me back then. But she went through this. It was a young girl, and she was kind of manipulated by an older guy. You can figure that storyline out. And the opening of the first line of the chapter following that it said, "Experience is the dearest teacher, but how often it unfits you for further travel." And you got to get experience, but it does take a toll on you. Some things you go through that you could otherwise learn from can alter your opportunities in life thereafter. That's why, man, you tell the young people, be careful, and like Uber is your friend, young people. Go have fun. I know you're going to, but get a DD or an Uber home and don't put your life in jeopardy, for the love of God.
Oh, yeah.
Or somebody else's.
Yeah.
I mean,
you're right.
In the whole Lutzenkirchen Foundation, what Mike's doing, God bless him for that. He's saving lives. I have no doubt he's saving lives. I wish we could be doing it with Philip still around to hang out with.
I pulled up a picture and I showed Mike Letzenkirchen and one of his daughters at an event of my son Wilson with Philip Letzenkirchen, and that would have been November 19th of 2011. Auburn was playing Samford, and that's when the players all saluted Pat Sullivan, of which I have a Pat Sullivan jersey from when I was a kid, Ronnie, older than you, that he signed in 2008. And there's Philip Letzenkirchen out there with all my kids. Everybody got their pictures with him. And I mean, that's what we remember. And one of y'all two said it. How's Auburn keeping these guys? You're going to have some guys go in the portal. Hell, I had friends in college that left, not many, but a few. But Auburn's keeping its players. And, Auburn's got that College of Engineering. Holy cow. There's some money coming out of there. But as a collective, I'm curious for either one of y'all being in Birmingham, and I'll be down there looking like next week I'm going to come. Let's talk.
You look me up, Browne, when you get here.
We're all going out. We're all going out to the fish market downtown.
Cool.
I mean, I'll buy dinner. That's a great place. It really is. Doug, by the way, hey, Ronnie, when Auburn was playing back a couple of years ago in Birmingham, and they ended up playing Houston, in Iowa, Doug gave me the restaurant list. He gave me 8 restaurants. Italian,
I'm nervous doing that.
Seafood. Everybody's got to have a great German
casual,
restaurant.
high end. Man,
Yeah.
I've got the Eagle 5 top 10, Rob.
Yeah, it's awesome. I like the Char Bar there in Mountain Brook. There's Brick Top.
Hey, do you think we could? Ronnie's a genius on this. Do you think we could monetize that? Let me get sponsors. Like every week I'll publish the Eagle 5 top 10 Birmingham food and wine scene restaurants. There's got to be some money.
Pretty good idea, because I'm kind of a foodie.
It's a great idea.
And my wife and I are both foodies. We every time we travel somewhere, we're always looking for the. I made a reservation at this place last time we were. My wife's from Philadelphia, but I made a reservation at this place in Philly.
Are you talking to me? That kind of Philadelphia?
Hey, you're talking to me, huh? Hey. Has she done the Rocky steps? There's
above average chance your wife is Italian. Am I right?
She is not Italian. She is not. She is. I think her dad was Irish, or her granddad was Irish.
That would be the second option I would have picked.
Yeah, but yeah, I made a reservation downtown in Philly, and it was about as big as a closet when we get in there.
Yeah.
She's like, "What is this place?" And I'm like, we go in. It's actually a pretty neat place, but food was phenomenal. So, but you're talking about foodies.
I love it. I got to ask y'all, both of you talked about NIL and what Auburn's doing to retain employees. Doug, you know it. I know it. Ronnie, you know it. Customer retention, employee retention. You got to, everybody, every executive, every client I've ever managed, you got to invest in your people. And Tommy Tuberville, everybody said it, but he said it a lot. There's a certain kind of kid, young man, young woman, that comes to Auburn. You don't have the happiest students in America for nothing. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that, but it also seems to be that way with athletes. And I saw Aiden Holloway in the handshake line being hugged on by his teammates, and I don't think they hate him. And hey, he made a decision, but you just don't see many significant people leave Auburn, students or athletes or coaches.
And certainly not go to the school across state. That happened there. Yeah, and good for him. Good for the kid. It's worked for everybody. So, but I think of the two guys that James Willis and Brother Oliver are the two that I can think of. And Brother did it twice, and either one of them are very well thought of as far as not as coaches. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about otherwise.
Ronnie, sometimes I'm small. I should be a bigger man, but I struggled with the Willis move to Alabama.
Yeah.
I just, maybe there's another side to it, but as for Bill Oliver, man, what a defensive genius the guy was. and I appreciated the things he did at Auburn. It was obvious to me in 1998 when he got a couple of games to coach that he was not going to be the next head coach at Auburn. When he stumbled through this feeble attempt to embrace the Auburn creed, do you remember that? In the locker room,
it was hey, and look,
the word awkward comes to mind.
Well, it's look, I mean, Wayne Hall kind of he was able to flip the script a little bit, but that is a very, very difficult thing to do when you've been to school to school at one place and try to go to the other. I mean, I can tell you from I interviewed with Alabama, and this is when Mike DeBose was coach.
We forgive you, Ronnie.
I know, right? I'm a young guy looking for a job, and I go over there and I talk to them, and finally word gets back to him like, look, hey, loved you, everything's great, but hey, bottom line is you're an Auburn guy, we can't hire you. And that was that was a lot.
That was the extent of the qualifications.
That was the extent of the qualification, and so and hey, I get it. It's but I mean, as a young guy looking for a job, and I've told this story before. When probably not on here, but when I started this website, Auburn Undercover, I had the right. It was part of an ESPN network. Network being a generous term, before 24/7 ever existed, and Alabama was one of the ESPN sites that I had the rights to. So I go over and meet with Coach Saban, and actually it was at SEC Media Days, and we talked, and he said, "Hey, how do I know?" Because I had GA'd for him at LSU, and so I had this Auburn site, and I'm starting the Alabama site, and he says, "Well, how do I know that I can trust you?" I said, "Well, Coach, we work together. I'm not going to screw you." And he says, "Fine." I said, "But here's the deal I'll make you." I said, I'll start this Alabama site. You play ball with us. And, he said, if I give you something, he said, you can't give it to them. I said, that's fine. I said, but whatever they give me, I'm not giving you either. And he said, fair enough. I'm good to go.
You did that with Nick Saban?
Nick Saban. Yeah.
Wow.
At that point, my investors signed off and here we are. So he was a big part of that.
Yeah. If you hear, I think I've got the cast of characters about right, but to me, one of the absolutely critical, historically significant developments was Bobby Louder's role and he talks about, he's been interviewed, when Barfield was out and Auburn almost hired Vince Dooley. Both of y'all have heard this, but the interviews, hearing it in that deep Southern accent of the cast of characters, Pat Dye and Louder himself. But to hear that Louder said, when my Bama friends were calling me and they're saying, listen, now you really don't want to hire that Pat Dye guy. And that was a tell. That's like reading a deep. You can see that defensive lineman that leans forward offensive lineman, it's going to be a pass. He leans a certain way. It was a tell that Auburn absolutely needed to hire Pat Dye once Dooley would have been fine at Auburn, favorite son and all that. But Auburn I don't think Vince Dooley was the same guy in terms of toughness, having grown up the way Pat Dye did in the agriculture, the cotton fields with black and whites, getting crops in to the point where Dye didn't really understand racism the way we think of it back in that era. You know what I'm saying? And so there are moments where you either get it right or not on the CEO hire, on the head coaching hire. I love Auburn basketball, and people can give credit to whoever we need to, but Auburn, out of desperate times call for desperate measures, Auburn basketball was about to be extinct. We were talking about the arena having been built on an Indian burial ground. And what the hell did we have? You can tell who I'm mimicking here. What the hell did Auburn have to lose hiring Bruce Pearl over a recruit being invited to a barbecue in Knoxville, for God's sake?
Well, I was in Knoxville November 9th, 2013 with my kids. Auburn beat Tennessee 55-24. Auburn took a knee at the 4 with about a minute left. I was looking for the Tigers to go to 62. So I go back and I'm spending the night with some great friends. I've known Dorothy since she was born with her two brothers and me. And they're very good friends with Bruce Pearl. He lived actually across the fence out there off of, their 26 acres. And his son Mikey spent a lot of time over at their house with Jackson and Parker. So I always knew about him. And I was joking around and I said, hey, I know y'all are close to Bruce Pearl. I said, I don't know him. And I got to say, this guy we got there now, Tony Barbee, is the worst coach in Auburn history in any sport. And that was before Sonny Galloway got there.
Before Harsin. Let's not forget.
And then before Harsin. So so now he ranks third on that list. Harsin's in a league by himself. So I said, and I said, go tell him Auburn would love to have him. I was kidding around. And I had nothing to do with it, but I just remember they said, well, we'll tell him. I said, does he want to get back into coaching? And they said, hell yeah, he does. They said, he misses it so bad. And you think about when he got off that plane, there wasn't a crowd like there was when Saban came back, and that was kind of like the Beatles at Shea Stadium when they got off the airport at the airplane in 1964. But my God, both of y'all,
I got a great show. It's okay, guys, to talk about what do you want to talk about on this show, like the next show.
Yeah,
I had a great show idea, and we've got time.
Let's go.
It doesn't have to be next week because it's not time sensitive. But let's do a what if, the top 5 or 10. What if this had happened? What if Alabama had hired Rich Rodriguez instead of, for all I know, they'd have just the same number of national championships. I don't think so.
Absolutely.
I don't think so. What if Alabama had hired Bobby Bowden instead of Bill Curry? Auburn might have disbanded football at the end of all of that. And then on the Auburn, and you can add Georgia, whoever you want. There's just a slew of what ifs, and coaching hires are a target richer environment. But there's what if Auburn had not hired Stephen Leaf, guys? I mean, the carnage. Ron and I talked about this at happy hour. The carnage that alleged president created on all kinds of fronts. I hadn't even researched the academic front, and damage may have been done there. I'm sure that's real too.
Well, and I want to jump back. I think, Doug, you made a point a while ago about Dye having grown up in the cotton fields and being around blacks, whites, whatever. Former assistant on Dye's staff who can tell this story publicly if he wants to, so I won't call his name. But he's sitting in the meeting with Dye when he gets there, and they've got I don't know how many of you have been in a recruiting room, but you got these cards on the board and all that stuff. And so they've got you got your depth chart up the same way. So he's going through the depth chart, and Dye's like, what does that mean? So you got B's on some of them and W's on the other one. He says, what does that mean? He says, well, that means black or white. I said, take that off. I don't give a damn if they're black or white. He said, can they play football? He said, that's what I care about.
Yeah. Here. Hey, didn't y'all say you're going to have Joe Witt on, Rob?
I didn't. I'd love to have Joe Witt on. I like the quail hunting with Joe.
I'm friends with Joe. I'm not talking about the NFL coach, Joe Jr.
Yeah,
but I would love to have Coach Witt on, man. You ever been put in your place by one of these grizzled veteran coaches? I have, hand raised. I was at a gathering of
course we have.
Yeah, I was, when you're trying to fake it as an analyst and talk about football, and then you find yourself in front of Joe Witt. Just shut up and listen, Doug. But I was at the club in Birmingham. It's the goofiest name in the world, but it's some kind of Auburn gathering. And I had the opportunity to talk to Coach Witt. And it was heading into signing day. I forgot what year it was. And I asked Coach Witt, I loved his answer. I asked Coach Witt, listen, Auburn people have been frustrated with our linebackers being kind of undersized, and we hope their quickness would help. But is Auburn, I said, Coach Witt, do you think Auburn's should we sign bigger linebackers so we can, be stout against the run? And he said, Doug, when I was working for Coach Dye and I was recruiting, size and all those metrics are fine, but size and speed is great. But what I looked for when I was recruiting was a football player.
Yeah.
And coach, I mean, they're all football players. Expound on that. And some kids, they may not run a 4.4, or if for a linebacker, a 4.6 is pretty good. But I just knew they had a nose for the ball. They loved physical contact. They were a headhunter. And I think sometimes recruiting, it used to be called recruiting out of magazines, can mislead some coaching staffs that their fans are gonna adore them, but are they missing some of these football players that may not have the speed, but they know how to win football games?
Yeah.
Well, I was talking about Coach Wood. I've known Coach Wood for 30 years. And so when I was at Auburn, I did a lot of different things. I worked in the equipment room. I worked in the recruiting office, and I worked at Coach Wood's farm for 5 years.
Wow.
And so every day before practice, I would go out and take care of the dogs, his hunting dogs, and the horses and the cows. And I grew up on a farm. So, but we got to be very, very close. In fact, he called me a couple nights ago. We talked for close to an hour, I guess. But
great guy.
We're still in contact. And I think,
Ron, is he doing well? Is he feeling good and all that?
He's doing great. He had his knee replacement, and I think that was last year, so he's doing really well. I think Miss Ethel's doing good. He's got 2 of his grandkids there, and I think Joe's got 3. I get JoJo. We used to call it Joe Jr.'s got 3. Of course, he's the coordinator for the Commanders in DC.
What a career he's had! Yeah,
he's done a great job, and he's a really good coach. A lot like his dad. But Joe Jr. will end up being a head coach in the NFL. But yeah, I think Coach Witt's doing great. He finally got Miss Ethel to move out to the farm, and they built him a house out there, and they I think he's really enjoying himself, and he's still doing some fundraising and some things for Auburn. So I think he's enjoying life right now. He seems
that's fantastic.
You know who would be a cool interview for us sometime? Chico, who worked out there at Coach Dye's ranch. He runs it. I mean, whatever they do, I'm sure he's still out there. But I remember talking to him August of 2019. I said, "How'd you end up here?" He said, "Well, he lived in Notasulga, maybe Macedonia, one of the suburbs of Notasulga. If you are an Auburn fan, Lochapoka and all those towns. He just saw him at a gas station and said, 'Why don't you come out here and help me?' And 26 years later, he's driving the wagon and just running that. There's so many cool stories, but you know what? I would love to see and go pay my respects to that oak tree out there at Crooked Oaks where Coach Dye was buried that day. I mean, Auburn people love everything about Auburn, and you will get ripped to shreds by Auburn people if you ever say, it's all just about the winning. Screw all that other stuff. You're a dead man walking. And I think we all feel that.
You're so right about that.
I mean, it's just the way it is. And damn, this is fun, man. This is like, open bar tab. I mean, talking about Auburn. But I'm coming down in the next 2 weeks, maybe next week if I can do it. We're all going to go out to dinner. We're going to go see some people. But man, what an honor and a privilege. This is an honor and a privilege.
I'm your concierge, Ronnie, and we will not lead you astray wherever you want to go.
There's a possibility we could have an elderly lady. We got it. How is she doing? She's got to be pushing 104. That's all I can say.
Last I heard, she was in a nursing home and was tangled up in her pantyhose. So I'm not sure.
Oh, you know what? The persona behind that character needs to come to grips with this reality. You helped make Paul Feinbaum extremely wealthy. That was one of more than a cast of characters that really blew up that show in Birmingham, of all places, Birmingham, Alabama, Rob, the football capital of the South. And we got to, as Auburn people, we got to play at neutral Legion Field. Legion Field is the definition of neutral in an Iron Bowl, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. Absolutely.
Because Coach Dye liked to say, let me tell you something, Rob. If you got 4th and 1 in Legion Field in an Iron Bowl, you better get 3 yards.
That's right. I've been to a lot of games. We all have over there, but Birmingham still, there's per capita, 85% of people surveyed
Yeah.
are college football fans.
Oh,
I'm going to
yeah.
guess the other 15% never got the survey because
Sports gambling capital of America.
Oh yeah, but I've never seen a city like Birmingham and
It's
a state like
interesting.
Alabama. When it
Yeah,
and that's where Auburn's
warts and
located.
all. It's interesting.
Shit, hell yeah, it is. And it is a great food city. And Auburn, we know some restaurants down there, but yeah, I think that fish market, Bricktop, and the Greek restaurants, holy cow. Go Greek.
There's a heritage there for sure, but then there's also some of these talented new chefs like Adam Evans, and he says War Eagle. He's got to be careful in Birmingham. He can't say that too loudly with the clientele, but he was famous at the restaurant in Atlanta, and he's a big Auburn guy. And what he's doing at Automatic Seafood in Birmingham is a bunch of others, but Adam Evans is one of my current most admired chefs, and their heavy emphasis on seafood, but they've got other table fare. If you like beef, they'll take care of you there too. And oyster.
I already know where we're going.
bring your platinum card, Rob, at Automatic.
We're gonna go. We're gonna have fun, man. Thank you, man. This is awesome. We'll do it again next week. Maybe some what ifs. Let's get them ready. I love it.
Enjoyed hanging out, guys. Hey, War Eagle, I hope Auburn shows up with their 3-point shooters tonight. They're probably going to need it against Ole Miss.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, that was executive producer Brendan Martin. Thank you. This thing's growing. Share it and tell your friends. And I'm going to look at the Auburn Undercover site and probably listen to a podcast when I take the dogs to the park right now. So thank you.
See you.
Or damn.